Welcome to Lesson 2 of CPR First Aid. Today we're going to go over the first aid basics. Let's start with the basics. So what is first aid? First aid is the immediate care that you give to someone with an injury before someone with more advanced training arrives. It can help to someone recover more completely or more quickly, and it might be the difference between life and death. Most of the time, you're going to give first aid to minor illnesses or injuries, but you might also give first aid for a more serious illness or injury, such as a heart attack or major bleeding. Your rescuer duties. So, do you think you are required to provide first aid in any case scenario? Some jobs you might require you to perform first aid on duty, for example, a law enforcement officer, firefighter, etc. But in any other scenario, you may choose to provide first aid. Do you think asking to provide first aid is necessary? Why or why not? It is necessary to ask for consent unless the person cannot respond, where you must assume that they require help. And this is also applicable from the Good Samaritan law. Here are the steps to take before helping. If the person responds, you can introduce yourself as a first aid provider before you touch them and ask them if you can help them as well. And if they agree, you can provide first aid. If they refuse, call 911 and stay with them until someone with more advanced training arrives. And if the person is confused or cannot answer, assume that they want your help. First aid kit. First aid kit contains many things, as you can see from the list here, and it contains the supplies that you might need in an emergency. So make sure to keep these supplies in a sturdy, watertight container that's clearly labeled, and make sure to know where your first aid kit and replace it so the kit will be replenished and be ready for your next emergency. Check the kit at the beginning of each work period for expired supplies. Make sure it is complete and ready for an emergency as well. Here are the quantities and the equipment in a first aid kit. Now, victim and rescuer safety. What do you think is the first step in ensuring victim and rescuer safety? The first step is assessing the scene. You can't help anyone if you're injured yourself. You might have to give first aid in a dangerous place, where the injured person may be in a room with poisonous fumes on a busy street or in a parking lot. So you must consider the following when checking. Make sure that it's a safe location to provide first aid. Look for people who can help provide first aid or call 911. Check who's injured, how many people are injured, and what happened. And check where. Where does the person need to be moved? And 911 will also need your exact location. It is crucial to provide first aid without becoming another victim, so don't put yourself in a dangerous situation. Now, washing your hands. Washing your hands is one of the most important protections you have, and make sure to use soap and water if your hands are visibly dirty after taking off your gloves. So start by wetting your hand with clean running water and apply soap. Rub your hands together and all surfaces of your hands and fingers for at least 20 seconds. Rinse your hands with lots of running water. Dry your hands with a paper towel or air dryer. And if it's possible, use your paper towel to turn off the faucet. And if you don't have access to water and soap, use hand sanitizer. Rub your hands well to loosen the germs and allow the hand sanitizer to air dry. Universal precautions. They are intended to protect you and your co-workers as well. So for the best protection, you should treat everyone's blood as if it were infected. Bodily fluids such as blood, saliva, and urine can sometimes carry germs that cause diseases. This is where PPE, so personal protective equipment, comes in. PPE is gloves, eye protection, and a mask. And these all protect you from blood or other bodily fluids. So here are the steps when using universal precautions. Make sure to wear PPE whenever necessary. Put all the disposable equipment that has touched blood or bodily fluids in a biohazard bag. And to dispose of the biohazard bag, make sure to follow your company's plan for disposing of hazardous waste. And wash your hands with soap and lots of water after properly taking off your gloves. So this is just an image. Now, exposure to blood. Bloodborne diseases are caused by germs, and a rescuer might catch a disease if the germs in someone else's blood or body fluid enter their own body, often through their mouth or an eye or a cut in the skin. So to be safe, they must first wear PPE to keep from touching the injured person's blood or bodily fluids. And some examples of bloodborne diseases include HIV, so it's a virus that causes AIDS, hepatitis B, and hepatitis C. So exposure to blood. Step 1 is if you're wearing gloves, take them off. Step 2, immediately wash your hands and the contact area with soap and lots of water. If the bodily fluids have splattered in your eyes, nose, or in the inside of your mouth, rinse these areas with lots of water and flush them out. And finally, tell your company's emergency response program supervisor what happened as soon as possible. Then contact a healthcare professional. Now, taking off gloves. So when you provide first aid, the outside of your gloves might touch blood or other bodily fluids. So you must take your gloves off without touching the outside of your gloves with your bare hands. So the steps include you had to grip glove 1 on the outside near the cuff and peel it down until it comes inside out. Now cup the other gloved hand with your gloved hand and place 2 fingers of your bare hand inside the glove that is still on your hand. Peel it off with the 2 fingers so it comes out with the first glove that was already taken off, covered by the second glove. And if there's blood on the gloves, dispose of it properly in a biohazard bag and wash your hands after you give first aid so you don't spread germs. Now here's a more detailed picture, and there's also a video below that you can access.
Hey everyone, it's Sarah with Registered Nurse.
Now your task. You must first brainstorm safe scenes and create a scenario and state what you can do to help. Brainstorm unsafe scenes, create a scenario and state what you can do to help, and demonstrate how to take off gloves safely. Now, phoning for help. The AHA, American Heart Association, Adult Chain of Survival shows the most important actions/links that are needed to treat life-threatening emergencies in adult. The first link in this chain of survival is to recognize the emergency and phone an emergency number such as 911 to get for help. This section in part will teach you how and when to phone as well. Each place of business should have a plan for emergency response. This shows workers who, how, and sometimes when to phone for help in the case of an emergency. The first link in the adult chain of survival is to recognize the emergency and phone for help, as we can see with the telephone sign. The second one is early CPR. Third one is the use of an AED. Fourth is effective advanced care. And the last link is care afterwards. So a general rule when calling 911 is someone is seriously injured or ill, or you're unsure of what to do in an emergency. The second point is to answer all the dispatcher's questions, and as it is important to get help as soon as possible. And lastly, do not hang up until the dispatcher tells you to. Now, can you give an example of someone being seriously ill or injured? These can include that they don't respond to voice or touch, has a chest discomfort, has signs of stroke, problem breathing, severe injury or burn, seizure, suddenly they can't move a part of their body, has received an electric shock, or has been exposed to poison. Now, here are your facts. If you're alone, you should yell for help and check the ill or injured person. And if no one answers your yell and no immediate care is needed, then leave for a moment while you phone 911 and get the AED as well. Or if you're with others, stay with the ill or injured person and be prepared to give first aid or CPR if you know how to, and tell someone else to phone 911 and get AED if it is possible. Now, finding the problem. When you arrive at a scene, check the scene to make sure it's safe. As we mentioned before, assessing the scene. As you walk toward the ill or injured person, try to look for signs that are the cause of the problem. Next, you had to check if the person is conscious and if they can respond. So you had to tap them and shout loudly, "Are you okay?" And if the person responds and is awake, and they might be able to answer your question. So tell the person that you're there, ask for consent to help, and ask them what the problem is. A person might only be able to move, moan, or groan when you tap them or ask for or shout. So if so, phone or send someone to phone the 911 and get the first aid kit and AED. Now, look for any obvious signs of injuries such as bleeding, broken bones, burns, or bites. And finally, look for medical information, jewelry. This tells you if the person has a serious medical condition.
First,
gasping. Gasping includes the drawing air very quickly. It might happen through their mouth or when they move their jaw, head, or neck. And it might be forceful or weak. You might have seen this when someone's in a swimming pool and they're drowning. You can see like someone gasping. After the emergency. So this is post-emergency, privacy, and after the emergency. As a first aid rescuer, you're going to learn about private things about your victim, such as their medical condition. Now, you had to give all this information about the injured person to EMS rescuers and your company's emergency response program supervisor. And you might also have to fill out a report for your company. But you must not share this information with your other co-workers, as you must keep private things private. Now, let's review what we've learned today in this lesson. You decide. A woman aged 30 is drowning in a lake. You are on a hike and you see her drowning. You are not the best swimmer, but you still want to help her. Should you jump in the lake to save her? And what should you do? A man aged 55 faints while he is on a run. You are on a jog and you see this happening. Are you required by law to help him? Do you have to ask him for consent when trying to help? A girl aged 4 faints in a parking lot. What is the first thing you should do when trying to help her? For the first one, if you're not the best swimmer, you could throw out a buoy and try to help her that way. For the second one, you are not required by law to help him, but you must ask consent if you do try to help him. And for the last one, you must first call emergency services. Homework. From the list below, create one slide on any of the functions of any of these items below. So these are parts of a cell. And research and create another slide on any of these systems below. Thank you. That's the end of today's lesson.